It started innocently enough. I picked up a cart and began browsing the aisles. I needed some groceries and a few household items, and I figured it wouldn't take me more than an hour or two to get what I needed. But as I made my way deeper into the store, I began to notice strange things happening. The shelves seemed to stretch endlessly, and the fluorescent lights overhead flickered ominously. The air was thick and heavy, and it was difficult to breathe. I tried to shake off the feeling of unease, but as I turned a corner, I found myself in a section of the store I had never seen before. The shelves were filled with strange, unrecognizable products, and the air was thick with an unfamiliar scent. The lights in this section of the store flickered and hummed in a way that made me feel disoriented and dizzy. As I tried to make my way back to the main aisle, I realized that I was lost. Every turn I took seemed to lead me deeper into the labyrinthine store, and the shelves stretched on forever. I tried retracing my steps, but the aisles had changed, and I couldn't find my way back to where I started. That's when the real horror began. I heard strange whispers coming from the shadows, and I caught glimpses of twisted, inhuman shapes moving just out of sight. Every time I thought I had found my way out, I was met with a dead end or a closed door. The shelves were filled with bizarre items that seemed to be alive and wriggling, and the air was filled with a sickening stench that made my stomach turn. As the hours ticked by, I grew more and more desperate. My phone had no service, and the only other people I saw were shoppers who seemed just as lost as I was. The longer I stayed in the store, the more the whispers became louder and more insistent. And then, as I turned yet another corner, I saw something that made my blood run cold. A figure stood at the end of the aisle, shrouded in shadows. It was tall and thin, with long, spindly limbs and an elongated face. As I watched, it turned to look at me, and I saw that its eyes were glowing a sickly green. I froze, unable to move, as the figure started moving towards me. I turned and ran, my heart pounding in my chest. But no matter how fast I ran, the figure seemed to be right behind me, always just out of sight. I ran past shelves filled with grotesque and twisted products, some of which seemed to be alive and wriggling. The aisles began to twist and turn in ways that made no sense, leading me in circles and dead ends. Hours turned into days, and I lost track of time. The store seemed to be endless, and the horrors lurking within it were beyond my comprehension. I was hungry, thirsty, and exhausted, but I couldn't stop. I had to find a way out. And then, just when I thought all was lost, I saw a faint glimmer of light in the distance. I ran towards it, my legs burning with exhaustion. As I got closer, I saw that it was an emergency exit, and with a burst of adrenaline, I pushed it open and stumbled out into the bright sunlight. I collapsed onto the pavement, gasping for breath. When I looked up, I saw that I was surrounded by other shoppers, all of whom had the same dazed and confused expression on their faces. They too seemed to have emerged from the endless store, disoriented and shaken. We stumbled to our feet and looked back at the store, but it was nowhere to be seen. Instead, we were surrounded by trees and greenery. It was as if the store had never existed. We exchanged horrified glances, realizing that we had all experienced the same nightmare. None of us spoke as we made our way back to our cars, still in shock from what we had just gone through. It wasn't until I was driving home that I realized something else. I had been in the store for what felt like days, but when I checked my phone, only a few hours had passed. It was as if time had moved differently inside the store, as if it had its own twisted reality. I couldn't shake off the feeling of dread and unease that lingered with me long after I left the megastore. Every time I saw a fluorescent light flicker or heard a strange whisper, my heart would race and my palms would sweat. I was afraid that the horrors of the store would follow me forever. But even more unsettling was the fact that no one else seemed to remember the store. When I tried to tell my friends and family about what had happened, they looked at me with confusion or disbelief. It was as if the store had never existed, or as if I had dreamed the whole thing. I knew the truth, though. I had been trapped in a store of horrors, and I had barely escaped with my sanity intact. And while I never went back to that particular store, I couldn't help but wonder if there were other places out there, hiding their own twisted realities and horrors, waiting to trap unsuspecting shoppers in their endless aisles. Please, give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to notifications for new incredible stories from Reddit.